All right. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Kelly Mann, and I am the Director of Programs here with A Time to Heal. And joining us today, we have Brooke Webster. Brooke is a licensed mental health practitioner offering therapy services to the greater Omaha area, specializing in assisting those with chronic illnesses and life changes. Born and raised in Lincoln, she moved to Omaha in 2020 following school and work in the Kansas City area. Currently still on staff casually at Methodist Estabrook Cancer Center, Brooke has ongoing knowledge, experience, and understanding of the needs of those living through cancer and treatment. Thanks again, Brooke, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So this was actually a topic that Kelly had presented because other people were interested in it, kind of understanding the mental health background that goes through the cancer diagnosis, living with cancer process, but specifically the topic of toxic positivity, which we will get into. So just a quick brief overview. This is me in case you can't see me. I am a social worker by trade, so I hold a certified master social worker license as well as a mental health license. I am still on staff casually, like she said, at Methodist Cancer Center through the social work department, but I am the owner and therapist at Webster Counseling here in the Omaha area. I wanted to put my contact information down, so in case there were any questions that you were not comfortable asking in the public forum and wanted to ask me directly, I'm more than happy to respond to those. So there's my email address. And then that is the office phone number for Webster Counseling in case you prefer to call, chat. I am accepting new clients in the event that anybody is interested. I offer in-person and virtual services. If you're out of state and wanting some options, I can look into to see if I can get like a dual license telehealth certification through that state. But in the event that you are kind of just teetering or thinking about mental health services, on the bottom of the slide, I did list some options for how to start to receive those. Social workers and mental health support staff at your cancer center are a great place to start if you're trying to like dip your toe into some assistance. If you're really wanting to find a therapist, the best options are to go through your insurance company. There's like a find a doctor option, and then you can search counselors as well. Or Psychology Today is a great website because they have a find a therapist button. You can narrow it down by the state that you're in, the city that you're in, the insurance you have, and any kind of issues you're wanting to focus on. So you can find the best person for you, and it will tell you if they're accepting new clients or not, and then the best contact for them. So just some general overview. All right, diving in. So mental health has been a very recent topic just with COVID and all the things that have happened in the past few years, but it's a topic that has been researched for many decades, even prior to that, specifically in the cancer field. So just to give some general background, kind of the collaboration or connection that mental health and cancer have. Majority of the research is done within breast cancer. That's very common because a lot of the like medical side research is also in breast cancer. Not to say that other fields have not done it for other diagnoses, but we just have a plethora more with breast cancer patients, survivors, caregivers, things like that. So not surprising, mental health is more common with those with active cancer, surprisingly, than those that are cancer-free or survivors. So it kind of tells us that a lot of the resources that we need to pool are need to be focused on like active treatment, current diagnoses, new processes, things like that. As we are well aware, pandemic increased mental health awareness, but also the needs of it. At the same time, it also a lot of times limited the resources that people could get access to just with staffing, with in-person changes, with people's comfortability being out. So although we've seen people be more open to the idea of mental health, there's still a very large gap in terms of services, whether that's through insurance coverage, accessibility, telehealth resources, technology options, and such forth. To dive more into specifics though, depression and anxiety and PTSD are actually the most common diagnoses with patients and caregivers. This was done in a research study, and I'm really happy that they included the caregivers because, as a lot of you know, cancer is a family disease. Not only does it affect it genetically, but also it takes your support options and everybody else in order to help you through it. So the caregivers do end up having some mental health needs as well, sometimes even more depending on what they're going through, especially as they care for themselves, but also of the patient. So depression, anxiety, PTSD, the research study kind of went through, did a lot of questionnaires, broke it down, and there were some risk factors that kind of went along with it as well, but there's also some protective factors. So in mental health, especially in social work, but also just mental health in general, there's a lot of groups of people that are at risk for any kind of mental health illness, whether that's you have a current medical illness, you have a history of mental health in your family, you're going through a large change, low support systems like friends or family, distance, all of those are what we call risk factors. But on the flip side, there's also protective factors. So things that if you were to be at risk, if you have these in place, it makes it a lot easier either to get through it or to at least cope with those. And those include a younger age, being male, longer time since your diagnosis, any kind of active treatment. This was specifically, the study was done during COVID. So one of the options was having access and information to COVID or any other pandemic related information. Personal health satisfaction, good sleep, good relationships with friends and family, and currently being employed. So a lot of the protective factors are just, do you have a stable environment? Do you have people that can support you? And do you have something that you work towards? People in active treatment, surprisingly, are working towards something. Survivors, caregivers, people who have never been diagnosed are outside of that because they're trying to find resources on their own. A lot of the financial resources that patients can access typically are done during treatment versus afterwards, even though we know the medical bills continue for a very long time after that. So then rates of change based on risk protective factors. So essentially meaning, like, again, the more protective factors you have, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have some kind of mental health need. It just means if you do, or when you do, you have a lot more supports in place in order to process and get through that. Okay. Any specific questions on the research? I know it's kind of like a lot of information and kind of just a touch point, but any specific questions on that before I move on? Okay,
I have one question.
Yep.
I believe, and I'm wondering if others concur, I'm incidentally a stage 4 METS. I believe the psychological effects of COVID have contributed largely to my depression. Being unable to go to restaurants, museums, stores, or gather where there are crowds has been such a change in lifestyle.
Marley Kramer. At this time.
Fortunately, I have not had COVID, but I know one METS sufferer contracted it, and she was in the hospital for 6 days. I'd be interested in yours and other people's point of view on this.
Does anybody else want to share before I jump in?
Ask me that again, please.
I just asked if anybody else in the group wanted to share their opinion before I share. Feel free to interrupt me if anybody has thoughts, but yes, I would definitely agree that's the case for a lot of people. Any kind of active treatment diagnosis, whether cancer or any other chronic illness, definitely has had that same effect too, where the supports that you guys were having or the things that were very important to you in order to continue to be mentally healthy, social aspects, going out, being around people, trying to live a quote unquote normal life were taken away, which then allows more time to sit and ruminate and have thoughts. And all you're pretty much doing then is just going to what's strictly necessary, which tends to be medical appointments, which again is surrounded by people who also are of high risk. You have to wear masks, you have to distance. And so there's not a lot of social communication that could even happen then that does happen now and or before COVID as well. So yes, I would say that's definitely very common for a lot of people. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on. So yes, then this brings to the topic. So when you get a diagnosis, a lot of people will tell you, like, they'll ask you questions about, okay, what is it? What stage? What does that mean treatment wise? They'll ask you all the logistics questions. And then some people will ask you how you feel. The tricky part to that is that then you're given the opportunity to share how you feel, whether you're sad, scared, upset, you don't know what to expect. There's a lot of unknowns. But the question is, do they really want to hear that? And that's where the topic of toxic positivity comes up, because typically if you share any kind of unhappy emotion or emotions that people can't support you and they just don't know what to do, which then leads them to probably do something along these lines of share positive quotes. They'll send you things on Pinterest or try and text you or call you and say something positive, even though you're feeling very unpositive. So some of these quotes on the screen, like, just because no one else can heal or do your inner work for you doesn't mean you can, should, or need to do it alone. Okay. All of these quotes on the screen, they mean very positive things. People have no bad intentions by sending them. They're supposed to uplift you and help you, but sometimes you just need to feel sad. You need to sit in your emotions. You need to feel what you have to feel without somebody telling you, oh, here you go. Here's how to feel happier. Sometimes you just don't want to feel happier, and that's okay. So these quotes are very common, which then leads us to toxic positivity. So definition, basic terms, is the pressure to only display positive emotions, suppressing any negative emotions, feelings, reactions, or experience. Now, toxic positivity doesn't just have to be from one person to another. It can be through social media, it can be through the news, it can be through organizations, groups, or things like that that don't acknowledge the negative side of things. So some of these might look familiar. You might be thinking that you're like hearing people say certain things in your head that fall in line with that. But let's just dive into like the background of toxic positivity and how it started. Some of these books you might recognize. This is the very so popular section called self-help. And I don't want to say that self-help books are bad, because there's not. It's just the mindset that people have in going into them. If you start to read a self-help book in order to drastically change your life by putting all of your options into a book and having it magically transform you, that's what gets a little bit tricky. This self-help is a multi-billion-dollar industry. This also compromises not only books, but conferences, motivational speakers, sometimes even like conferences, support groups, books that kind of go along with the same topic. And then they have multiple different facets that go with them. Granted, I have read some of these books and I do enjoy them. They're fantastic. But again, I don't go into them with the idea of like, this book is going to fix all of my problems. It's more so going into it the mindset of, this is a specific concern that I have. What tools can I learn from other people and see if it fits my lifestyle versus taking it as word. Atomic Habits is the book that I have read, and it's fantastic. Essentially, you grow slowly over time in habits that you're trying to learn. But if that habit is positive thinking or trying to get through a medical diagnosis or treatment and stay positive, it adds the emotional factor that people in a book can't tell you how to do or how to learn it. So self-help has been around for centuries. It originally started as what they call the New Thought movement back in the 19th century, so over 200 years ago. And it actually started through initially being tied to religion and then has grown out of that and more into books, authors, conferences, speakers, things like that. So it's not necessarily the fact that the self-help, again, is bad. There's nothing bad about these books or the messages that they convey. It's the fact that when people try and give you positive thoughts, it's trying to ineffectively tell you to be happy, even though you might not feel happy, versus recognizing, okay, why do you not feel happy? What is stressing you out? What are your concerns? What needs do you have moving forward? And it's as simple to say, like, if it were that easy just to be happy, then everybody would be doing it. It's the same concept people apply, like when the new year comes around and they have resolutions for physical fitness. If everybody were to have the perfect muscle tone, it would be easy and people would just do it. But it's not. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes support, and it takes resources in order to do that. People's happiness also follows that same line. So these are great. Take them with a grain of salt, though, because it goes along the idea of toxic positivity that if something goes wrong in your life, it's because you had a bad attitude. It's because you didn't try hard enough, not because the situations that you're in are honestly just not the best. So then, example of this in real life. You're sitting at coffee with a friend, you're having a conversation, you're talking about things, example that doesn't apply to cancer, but in general, I just lost my job. You're stressed about it, you're having tough thoughts, you don't know where to go, you go to a friend in order to offer support, to see kind of like, how can they help me? I just need to vent. And then they give a response of something like, at least you have all this time off now. It could be so much worse. Think about how much you're going to learn from this. So again, they don't mean negative things by it. They are just trying to encourage you out of a negative situation. Some more examples. Again, there's a whole list of options. Life will never give you more than you can handle. This one I know is very popular for people to hear, but I want to emphasize that just because this might be accurate, like life may never give you more than you can handle, that doesn't mean you should have to handle it or you have to handle it alone. You'll be fine. Don't cry, just smile. You have so much to be grateful for. Time heals all wounds. Your attitude is everything. Be grateful for what you learned. It could always be worse. Never give up. Everything happens for a reason. So people may say these things to you, or you may hear them, you may see them, social media, news, friends, it may portray them. But under all of it is the fact that it goes back to, it diminishes the feelings that you have and tells you just to be happy, and that will solve all of your problems. One that I hear a lot, both from the therapy side and from the social work side, is it could always be worse, or somebody always has it worse than I do. Just because you're not at the worst situation you're at doesn't mean you're at the best situation. So just being better than worse does not make it good. And it doesn't have to be the best. Like, you don't have to go through cancer with a positive attitude saying, oh my God, everything's going to be fantastic. This is not just a blip in the road. You're allowed to feel the stress because, one, your body is going through whatever it's going through, treatment wise, palliative care, medicines, doctors, appointments, fatigue, side effects, all of the things. But when people tell you, oh, you tell yourself it could always be worse, that doesn't put you in the right mindset to acknowledge the feelings that you have. Because in the medical side of things, sometimes we'll see that if people say, oh, it could always be worse, it diminishes how they feel, but it also diminishes their side effects, which means they could not report certain things to their doctor, to their medical team, because they're like, oh, well, I'm having some fatigue, but you know what? I'm not laying on the couch for 7 days in a row, so it could always be worse. Versus that could be a significant side effect of whatever medication it's taking. It may not be the best format for you. There may be things that you can talk to a physician about or your medical team to combat that, to be able to have the energy back if people were to acknowledge that they don't feel well and be able to share that. So we often rush into positivity because we generally want people to feel better. Again, they come from a positive, helpful standpoint, but it's also very uncomfortable sometimes for the people that are hearing it, because a lot of times if you're telling people, I am having a really crappy week, it's treatment has been really hard, the side effects are really intense, you're telling probably your closest friends, your closest family, people that love and support you, and they want to see you do well, also because they have an emotional tie in it too. Telling family members, I am having a really difficult week, I don't think treatment is working, sends other messages to them, because they're then interpreting that as, okay, is treatment not working? And they're trying to deal with their own emotions and also trying to offer you comfort at the same time. So they do it again from a place of love and support, but also hearing uncomfortable emotions tends to make people uncomfortable, not necessarily because it's a bad thing to share them, but because we haven't been taught how to approach them and how to let people feel those negative emotions in a positive, safe space without trying to fix the problem. People love to be fixers. As parents specifically, we spend our entire lives, and I say this too, because as a parent, we spend our kids' entire lives trying to make sure that they're the healthiest they can be, that they're happy, that they have everything they need. We're trying to do the best for them, but sometimes we forget about ourselves also. And other people reflect that as well. They want people to be happy. They want you to be healthy and safe and content in life. So if they can find an article, if they can find a quote, if they can find something to uplift you or to give you hope, they will send that your way versus telling you, okay, let's talk about how you feel. Tell me what's going on. What do you need in this time frame? They just want to give you something happy so your mood automatically changes. But at the same time, that diminishes how you feel and you don't have time to do it. So then becomes the question of why? Why do people do this? Why does this happen? What is the root of it? Just why? And it doesn't necessarily mean that time doesn't help, but time doesn't heal all wounds. It's a very comfortable saying for people to say, because it does, sometimes it gets easier with time, sometimes it gets harder, especially through cancer, because the diagnosis can change either very quickly, very slowly. It's a lot of times in the medical field, it's a hurry up and wait. So you may have to go through treatment, wait 6 weeks, get a scan to see if anything worked. People say, okay, just give it some time, everything will be okay. We just have to trust the process. We have to see how it is. That doesn't necessarily mean that it fixes the problem. It just means you have more time to think about it, but it also allows people more time to give you more positive quotes, to tell you things that they think that you want to hear or that they want to hear. So let's flip the script. Healthy positivity means making space for both reality and hope. Toxic positivity just focuses on the hope aspect. Healthy positivity is bringing in the reality concept to it. And healthy positivity is what we want to offer and what we want to change the space to be. Meaning that everyone reacts differently to distress. Not all situations have a silver lining or a positive outcome. And we're also not the only ones with a positive thought that would change our life. So of course, sometimes we even think like, okay, if I were to be happier, would things be better? If I were able to cope better, would things be better? So in changing this, people focus on what you should be doing, what you should be feeling, how things should be happening versus what is happening, and then how they can support you in that option. So again, the whole point of this presentation is, what the heck should I do? If this is an option, if this is a concern, how do I fix it? So the typical way that things go now, just with the toxic positivity, is people want you to ignore your emotions. You ignore the statement for support that you say something like, I lost my job. People ignore the basic statement, and then they want you to suppress the emotion, and then they want you to replace it with something happy. So again, this is done on a very unconscious level. They're not sitting there thinking like, okay, I'm going to ignore how they feel. I'm not going to validate them. We're just going to move on to something happier. They do it out of the goodness of their heart. It's just not fulfilled that way. So what is recommended to change it is to accept it, to process it, and then to decide. So accept it. This is my reality. This is what's happening. What are the facts? What are the logistics? I have treatment on these days. I have a prognosis of X amount of time. I have a scan in this amount of days to determine whatever it may be. This is my treatment regimen for X amount of cycles, whatever it may be. That's the logistics. And then to process it. How does that make me feel? What about it concerns me? What stressors do I have with it? What do I need to put in place resource-wise or whatever in order to do that? And then decide, okay, where do you go from here? What is the most important thing? What's the easiest thing to do in the moment in order to either relieve the stress or to ask for help? Asking for help is one of the hardest parts of life in general because we are taught to be independent. We're told to be able to do it on our own. Every test we potentially take throughout school or even in life is on your own. Do you have the right answer? Do you have the right solution? Can you find the correct answer? Versus, can we find the correct answer? What do we need to do to support you? How can we help you? What does that look like? So again, just trying to learn to change the process. So then how do you implement this in your life? These are some basic quotes that you can always use. People will likely be very thrown off by these. I'm going to give it to you because they're not used to hearing people directly say how they need help or asking for help in a way that changes it. So I just need to vent. If you call up a friend, you're having a hard time, or they call you and they ask you like, hey, how are things going? You can preface it by saying, you know what? I think I just need to vent. And then you can ask them like, are you okay with that? Because again, if you're putting emotions out to somebody else, they have to be willing to accept them. They have to be understanding that you don't want them to change it. It's not their fault that you feel this way. You just need to vent. You need to verbalize how you feel outside of your own body in order to maybe verbally process it. I can be best supported by. This is a great one to use, especially right after a diagnosis or if things change and people will rapidly ask you, like, if you need anything, you let me know, or how can I help you? Or sometimes you like have had enough casseroles to last a lifetime. Sometimes you don't need people to continually ask you, like, what are the updates? How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because then you feel like you have to give it to them. What you can do instead is, I can be best supported by, and then you can fill in whatever it needs to be. And of course, if you don't know the answer, then tell them, I don't know what the answer is, and I don't expect you to have them for me. This means like, I don't know it, you don't know it. It's okay that we don't know it. It's just what it is. It's the logistics of the situation right now. You may know how you feel, you may not know how you feel because you have so many emotions going through your brain. You just need time to not have to think about an answer and just sit in your feelings. I will let you know what help I need. This is great. Again, if you say like, I don't know, but if people are like, okay, if you need anything, you let me know, then you can reach out to them and say, I will let you know what help I need. This can be something as simple as like, can you go get the mail for me? Can you run this errand? I have groceries to pick up. Are you able to do it? But again, asking for help is very difficult, especially when a cancer diagnosis, any kind of chronic illness changes the level of independence that a lot of people have, either mentally and or physically. Sometimes you just can't do the things that you used to do, but sometimes you're trying so hard to hold on to them in order to keep your life as normal as you possibly want it to be, that you end up hurting yourself in the end. You end up fatiguing yourself too much. You end up being too tired because you drove to the store to get the groceries, loaded them by yourself, came home, unloaded them, and put away. Versus if somebody could easily have done that for you, it wouldn't have been as a physical exertion for them. But again, asking for help is hard. So learning to ask for help or learning to state what you need is the basics of how to change the toxic positivity into a healthy positivity. And last one, I'm not sure what I need right now. Again, all examples of just verbalizing how you feel or how you don't feel in the moment. It's letting people know that you don't expect them to have the magical cure-all for everything you need in that moment. Sometimes you just need support, and that might be what it is. Are there any specific questions on that? Because I want to give you guys some options to ask for examples before anything may happen, because this is the time.
Yeah, it looks like there is a question. I'll just read it. It's in the chat. It says, trying to ask for help can just add one more level of trying to organize my life, and I can't think of one more thing. it would be appreciated if friends would say, I'm doing blank for you. So I guess
Mhm.
it was a comment, not a question.
Yeah, I
Yes.
heard, I wrote that, and I heard that from someone who, I had many friends recently who will say, well, what can we do for you? Well, I was clueless. I couldn't even think of what I needed at the grocery store. I couldn't think of another thing. And I do go to counseling, and my counselor said that puts the responsibility back on me. And I couldn't take any more responsibility. So if a friend would just say, are you going to be home at 3 o'clock tomorrow? I'm having groceries delivered. And even if they just sent a bag of spaghetti sauce and spaghetti and just random things that basically everybody will eat, that is greatly appreciated. Just relieves me from, I'm going to pick up your mail for the next 5 days. Just that I'm doing it for you instead of me having to think, I don't know, should I ask them to do that? Is that too much imposing? What time of day should they do it? It just is too much. I got too many other things to worry about.
Yes. And also, I would say that's a great example too, because delegation is like a managerial type of job in the workforce. So trying to do it for your own life, especially as maybe like a primary person of the household who decides majority of things, pays the bills, makes the meals, orders the groceries, it can be daunting to have to then delegate. Okay, Cynthia's doing this, Joanne is doing this, blah, blah, blah is doing this, because then you have to keep track of it. A good blanket statement that you could use if it comes up again is, I don't have the brain capacity to figure that out right now. All I know is I have to eat, sleep, and function. So whatever you're comfortable doing, I'm comfortable letting you do. Because again, it's sometimes the game again, like spaghetti sauce and spaghetti. We don't know dietary restrictions. We don't know if people can swallow the food. We don't know if they can actually physically eat, if they're sensitive to temperature, so they can't eat ice cream or they can. So it's more so they don't want to overstep their boundaries either. I mean, like, I'm coming into your home and I'm fixing you a meal. So it's like, I have to eat, I have to sleep, and I have to pay some bills. So whatever you're comfortable doing, you tell me what you want to do and I'll let you do it. Yeah, great example. Great example. Any other comments, questions, examples? Feel free to ask me anything off the wall, because this is your guys' time to give examples, concerns, thoughts, even if it's not related to toxic positivity.
I have a situation that I really just don't know how to handle.
Mhm.
When I go to church in particular, I mean, anybody I see, or I like to avoid people because they ask me, how are you doing? And I'm not really sure how to answer that. I feel, and I probably have done this myself, I feel like I've got to give them a positive answer. And the latest thing I've been doing is just saying my spirit's good, and I just don't talk about the rest of it. But sometimes my spirit's not good. So I don't want to lie to them, but I also don't want to get into all that stuff there because a lot of them are just acquaintances, so
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say that's a perfect example too, because you don't want to dismiss how you feel, because you may not have high spirits or you may not be in the best positive headspace, but you also know that they're acquaintances. So they're not going to be people that sit down with you and offer support, or you're able to confide in them with whatever is going on. So again, blanket statements are going to be your best friend of, nothing's really changed, or things have changed, but I'm just not in the mood to talk about it. Or if it is like a religious base, like, prayers are always needed, but right now we just don't know. And I think a lot of it too is sometimes people do mean really well, but sometimes people are also very nosy and just want to know updates without offering the support. And you shouldn't have to necessarily field all of those. So I'm not doing the best, but we're here, we're surviving, and I'm trying to move forward. It's not the most positive answer that people want to hear, like, oh yeah, I'm doing good, I'm doing fine. And that's also very common, like, especially with some of my clients too. I'll ask them, like, the first question is like, how was your week? Good. And then I go, was it actually good? And then they'll actually sit down and start to talk about it. So if people give you a response and they want to know more, then it's up to you to decide, do you want to give them more information? Do you not want to give them more information?
I'm not sure this is true, but don't men always want the answer, the bottom line? I mean, they don't want to discuss it to death. They just want to give you the answer. And so I have to keep telling my husband, I just need to vent, but he doesn't listen. He doesn't get it. So I'm not sure what to hit him with.
Yeah. And with caregivers in general, that's very common because they love you. They want you to feel better. They want you to do well. And they feel at loss because they don't know what to do in order to help you. They don't feel how you feel on the inside because of whatever your treatment going through, whether you're in survivorship, active treatment, whatever it may be. And they just want something tangible that they feel like they're making a difference. And it doesn't come from a fact of like, I know what is right. I can fix it right now for you. They just want to be able to contribute and relieve you of some kind of stress. So again, you're like, I just need to vent. I just need support. If he doesn't take that, it's more so like asking why, like challenging him. I just need to vent. That's what all I need. If you don't want to hear, like I have friends, I can go to support groups, whatever it may be. Does he actually want a tangible answer? Does he just want something to do to fiddle, to keep himself busy, to keep his emotions off of it too? Because caregivers have a lot of high burden. They're trying to, again, manage their own emotions, trying to help you and probably keep a positive attitude. Like, I don't want them to know how much it's affecting me because they're going through it physically. At the same time, it's like, I just need to vent. I don't need anything else. Can you just give me a glass of water? Sometimes they just need to fidget and be able to do something. Basic tasks, or again, challenge them. Okay, I just need to vent. Do you want to hear me vent? Or do you just need to like step away and go somewhere else?
Well, if I do challenge him in any way, I get a list of everything he does right. I just want to write it down and say, I've got the list.
What does he typically say when?
Oh, well, I get the groceries, I keep the car running, I take you to the doctor, I get the whole list. And if just there's one little thing I want different, well, that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's tough too, because and then sometimes like, yes, I know how much you do for me. I really appreciate it. And then if whatever, I don't know, whatever it may be that comes up, like the car running, like you can just come in or you can relax. Like there are options for things to change. Get a challenge, which is hard because like, yes, you do appreciate all the things that he does for you, but also he doesn't have to continually hold all the burden or hold all the responsibility, especially if things shift, if dynamics shift, if emotions shift. They're just not exactly open to that because that means it changes their life too.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question that was submitted in the chat, Brooke. It says, how can I respond or manage friends and family or sorry, I was just seeing if I needed to mute anybody. I'm going to start from the beginning. It says, how can I respond or manage friends and family or even just kind acquaintances who insist, oh, you got this, you're going to fight this and beat it, even after I've explained, nope, this is going to kill me someday, not today, but they just won't hear me.
The good old boundaries question. So that one is tricky because again, they're coming from the best place, but they're also coming from a selfish place. And not selfish is a very negative connotation around the world. But what I mean by that is they are trying to also keep their spirits high and say like, I want you around for a very long time. So I'm going to try and be as positive as humanly possible because I don't want to think about the fact of losing you. And again, like you said, it's going to kill you now, 20 years from now, 70 years from now, we don't know. Sometimes even sooner, sometimes things may change, but they're coming from a place of they want you to be as hopeful as they are because they don't want to have the emotional processing that they're going to lose you. So it's not necessarily they want you to be happy. It's that they're trying so hard to be happy for themselves. It then reflects back upon you. So in response to that, and again, it depends on the person, on how close you are to them, what relationship you have with them, is it's okay if you want to be positive and you want to have high hopes. this is the reality that I know right now. So these are the emotions that I have around that reality, whether it's a new stage, a scan coming up, you got the all clear, whatever it may be. It's here's what I know, and this is how I feel in the moment. If you want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to process that with you, or to have a conversation, or to kind of walk you through how I feel. But also, it's okay for you to be happy. It's okay for me to be sad at the same time, or for me to know that this is what it's going to be like. And then the boundaries come into play. By boundaries, I mean letting people know, again, what you expect, what you don't expect, what is okay to say, what is not okay. If you're at the point where they say it so often, or you've heard it for so long, they're like, you're going to beat this, you got this. It is okay to come back at them and say, you know what? No, I'm actually not. That's not the reality of my diagnosis or my disease or my treatment or whatever the plan may be. I need you to support me here and now and what I'm going through, and not focus so hard on the end result. And that's very common in a lot of aspects of life, even work or family, as people look ahead so far into the future that they try to form their lives around what could be versus what is now. And again, healthy positivity, if they want to change that and say, like, you got this, they can say, I'm here to help you lift your spirits. If you would like assistance, whatever you need today, do you need to talk about it? Do you need to process it? I'm just happy I get the time to talk with you. That's a good way to like switch it into healthy positivity, because it takes the moment, you're present, but also they're not trying to tell you how to feel in the future. Great question.
This isn't a question, Brooke, but just a comment in the chat box. It says, you are a great therapist and you give really good information and ideas. Thanks. And a lot of people have heard that. So you're good.
Oh, thanks, guys.
We do still have time for more questions. So if anybody wants to come off mute or submit any in the chat box, we welcome them.
I can ask a question to you guys if you feel free to answer it. Do you guys, in hearing about like toxic positivity, and it was a topic that Kelly heard a lot about and had requested information from you guys, was it something that you guys have recently learned about and wanted to hear more about? Have you been experiencing it for a while? Are you trying to be more positive yourself and it just wasn't working? Like, how was the dynamic like for you guys, and listen to this presentation or talk about it?
So for
I'll
me,
pipe up on that one.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Shannon. Hi, everybody. I will say that this has been something that has been a challenge for me since day one of my diagnosis, and I'm 2 years in, and I still struggle with it because I don't want to take away their okayness with what's going on with me. I don't want to bring negativity in their life. But I do, like you said, I live in a different reality. I can't get caught up in false hope because that's only going to hurt me more. So trying to straddle that line of I want to be supportive to my family and friends, but I also have to live in my reality has been a challenge. And I loved that you termed it toxic positivity because I had never heard that before. And even in support groups, I will witness people saying, I'm not a survivor. I'm only a survivor because that's what's happening to me. If I had a choice, I wouldn't be doing it. And you hear other supporters in that group say, oh, no, you got this. And I always pop up and say, no, I understand. And it is okay. So just knowing that there are other people out there that were dealing with this problem of you have to be okay. And for me, one of the biggest challenges is I feel like I'm actually part of the problem, and I'm causing harm to myself because I'm not being positive.
Yeah. Because you feel like it's your job, because you get all the information from the doctors, you know how your body feels, you know what side effects you're going through, to offer them the positive response that they want to hear. versus
Yeah.
the reality of it is like, today was really tough. I am so tired. I could sleep all day. I feel nauseous. I can't get out of bed. Work was a struggle because I just don't have the mental capacity to deal with it right now. They don't want to hear those words because they want to feel at ease. They want to check it off their box of like, okay, I don't have to worry about that. And then they continue with their life. Whereas for patient survivors, caregivers, a lot of times, you still have their reality every second, every day. You can't just push it off. You can push off people's worry, but then you still have the worry yourself, maybe even more so.
Yeah, I've been going through this a lot ever since my diagnosis last year. I have friends, especially in my small group. It's a Christian group that we, usually meet once a week. They're always saying, "You got this. God has a plan for you. It's He will only give you what you can handle." I mean, I don't know what to say to that, but also they really don't want to hear anything that I have to say, So it gets me to the point where I just don't say anything because they'll always come back with the same stuff. So I find that the best help I've been getting lately is through my therapist because I can share everything with them and I can let them know exactly how I'm feeling. And they either understand or they don't, but they let me do it, without trying to make me feel better about myself. Because there are days that I can't get out of bed. There are days that I just want to sleep all day. I'm so tired. And then my friends say, well, just get moving around. Once you start moving, it'll be okay. Well, it's not necessarily true, and I never heard of the term toxic positivity before, but I love it because that's exactly what I've been experiencing, this last year or so. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, that's a very common one too, is like, you never give more than you can handle, which again, I bring back to the fact of just because you may be able to handle it doesn't mean you want to, and doesn't mean like you should have to. Because again, if you could choose to be cancer free or to never have a diagnosis, majority of people would choose that. So it's not like you chose to start a new job and there's a lot of stress, but you're somehow improving your life because of that job. No, this is something that's going to be ever present, ever on a medical history questionnaire. Every appointment, people are going to ask you about it. And sometimes it's the hard part is changing the people that are around you so that you're detoxing the support that you have. Because if you continually have those messages from people, that's all you're going to feel. You're going to feel diminished. You're going to feel put on the back burner, and going through treatment, cancer, whatever it may be in your process. If you need to sleep all day, it's because you're running on an empty cup. If you push through that, especially with treatment, side effects, whatever it may be, you could be worse off. And sometimes you just need to sleep. There's a difference between fatigue and like depression sleeping. And I think that's where people don't understand it, is they think it's a choice to be tired versus your body telling you we need rest. And cancer is also hard because a lot of times there are no external factors that show that you have cancer, unless of course there's like weight loss, hair loss, things like that. So people are comparing their insides to your outsides, being like, oh, you look fine. Like you look like you can get up and go for a walk or move or go get groceries or whatever, because they feel that on the inside because that's what they see, which is not the case. And it's like, nope, my body needs this. I'm going to take a rest. I cannot take from an empty cup.
One of my standard answers, and people ask me how I'm doing, is I say, I'm surviving. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it tends to get a different answer than you normally get.
What kind of answer does that give you?
No, I mean, if I say I'm surviving, it's like, okay, they don't pursue it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's just something that I use.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with that statement whatsoever because it's the truth. You are surviving. You're still here. You're still fighting. You're still moving on. But surviving also gives the underlying terminology that like it's still a struggle. It's still a battle. You're still working towards it. And if people want to know more, they will ask. But it also gives people the idea of, okay, it's not peaches and rainbows. or just going through another day. But again, it gives them the opportunity to ask questions or to give a statement versus just implying it right off the bat.
Okay.
I do have a question submitted in the chat box. It says, I'm facing a metastatic breast cancer for the rest of my life, and I would love my health to not be the first thing people ask about. I appreciate them being aware, but this is not this is a struggle for me this morning. I don't want that to be my total identity, is what they said. Suggestion and a nice way to redirect the first contact.
Yes, great. So I guess I'm going to assume that people will typically ask you, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? A good way to like redirect that conversation is to give a response based off of something else that's going on in your life. Like, you know what? I'm doing really well because work is going fantastic. Or, you know what? I'm really struggling because we've had a new employee come on. We're getting ready to move, and we're just redirecting the topic and your response completely off of anything health-wise. If they come back and say like, oh, no, I mean, like, how are you doing with like your diagnosis cancer thing or whatever they may verbalize that as, you say, I got it. Same thing. We're moving forward. I'm really just focusing on other aspects of my life so I can not just be the person who has cancer. And it's completely fine just to be that direct with them, given the opportunity that they will agree to that and move forward. And sometimes it's simple as saying like, I have cancer. I am not cancer. That's not my whole identity. You're still whatever you are to your family, your job, the people around you, the support that you have. And so it's just a part of who you are. It's not the whole thing of who you are. And telling people that is totally appropriate.
One person put in the chat box that was kind of related to that. It says, into the previous conversation as well, it says, one thing I found helpful is to tell people how I want them to respond to me. So for example, this person would say, I'd like you to tell me, I can see that you are working hard to cope.
That is fantastic. That is like the end goal of all the conversations of changing toxic positivity into healthy positivity. It just takes a lot of strength and comfortability with the person you're telling it to in order to do that. And your confidence has to be there in order to execute that at the same time. But sometimes you're so tired, mentally drained, you're just had treatment or a cycle or whatever it may be, and you don't have the capacity to take that on. It's okay to say like, I don't want to talk about it that way, or like, can you just ask me a question about how my dog is doing or something like that, and you can completely redirect it. But yes, I love that.
This is Carla. I just wanted to say that the toxic positivity is kind of a new term to me. It's been coming up and I've been hearing it. So when I saw this event, I wanted to be a part of it. But I remember early on in my diagnosis that I had several people say to me, you know, okay, you've got to just be positive about this, you know, have a good attitude. It's so important. And I would get to myself very angry. And so that's what this label does for me. It puts a label on my feelings basically. And so yeah, because I always thought, you know, positivity didn't get me where I am right now. You know, so that's absurd to think that positivity is going to help cure me. You know, it's just not, that's not it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And I would say that's exactly kind of like where it stems from, is people telling you that being positive is going to get you through it. And if that were the case, there would be no treatment. There would be no other options for things because there's so many factors that go into it. But at the same time, like if, again, that was at the beginning. So in hindsight, it's more so like, yeah, just be positive. You'll get through it. And be like, I'm going to get through it with the help of my team, with the help of my doctors, and the support of people who understand how I'm feeling right now. Yes. And like you said, it diminishes how you feel to the point that now you feel angry because you either didn't have a chance to express how you feel, or they didn't want to hear it. You don't know how you feel now because now you're just angry that nobody will listen. Yep.
Thanks for sharing, Carla. I will note that we do go until 11:15, so we still have a few minutes, 15 minutes for any open discussion, any experiences that you guys have felt, any questions that you have for Brooke. One thing that was put in the chat earlier that I didn't say out loud, it was a side note, but they said, I appreciate the use of the words, those with active cancer, in addition to caregivers and survivors. And for this person, they said, I do not see myself as a survivor since I'm currently still fighting cancer. So thanks for sharing that in the chat. I know some other people resonated with that comment as well.
Any other situations, questions, examples that you guys want to walk through? Any concerns with toxic positivity or just thoughts in general on the word?
A comment was just submitted and it said, it can be hard, but I do try to remember the purpose of their statements, referencing people having good intentions. They do want to help us. I became painfully aware of this when my husband received a sympathy card when I was first diagnosed. We both got a good laugh and realized they were just caring.
Yes. Yeah. And in those, it's like, thank you for support. I realize that you want, like, you could verbalize it however you want to, but yes, it's the same sentiment. Like, they do care. They do want to offer some kind of support. A lot of times people just do not know how, or if they do know how, or they think it might be the best to do one thing, what you really need is another thing. And they might not be able to give time or energy in order to do that. So sending like a simple positive message or checking in to see how you're doing is all they can manage to do. But setting those expectations with family and friends whenever you feel like it's appropriate is, here's how you can help me. This is what I'm going through. I know, like, the ever ongoing Facebook post of like, I have cancer. This is what's been happening. If you can support me, here's what you do. It has become very popular nowadays because so many people want to know so many questions. Misinformation gets spread very easily depending on how many people it goes through or what's happening. I had a patient I was working with at the hospital who got told from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, she's so sorry that she has stage 4 cancer and she was stage 0. So it just got passed along and passed along and passed along just through misinformation, which then gets harder because then you have to deal with that support and that toxic positive, like, you got it. I just want to tell you I'm believing in you and all the things. So clear expectations, clear messaging, keeping the information as close as you want it to be or as far as you want it to be.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of consuming some of your time here, but I just had a question all of a sudden popped into my mind. Have any of you started a Caring Bridge page where you can put the information out there? And if someone says, how are you doing? You could say, check my Caring Bridge page.
This is Carla again.
Yeah.
I have a Caring Bridge page that I started at the beginning of my journey, and I updated it very often, weekly at least, until about 18 months ago. And I just haven't been able to get back on there and do anything more, which keeps making me feel guilty, but I'm just tired of sharing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, Brooke, do you feel like it would be appropriate or acceptable when people are like, so how's your treatment doing, to respond with, hey, when was your last mammogram?
Yes, I think it's totally appropriate because it adds the humor to it, but it also shows that you're not a walking billboard for all of the treatment that you're going through. And if they will probably be like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean? Be like, well, you asked me about my medical stuff, so I'm asking you about your medical things. And it may be, and again, it's only appropriate probably for the people that you're closest to who don't take a tense offense to it, but it can be used too. Or if they ask you like, how's treatment going? Be like, do you really want to know? Or do you just want to tell me that it's okay? Like there are different routes and different direct approaches to challenge people and their thoughts depending on how close you are. But yes, I would say if you're very close with them and you can at least explain why you asked that question, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys ever receive toxic positivity from other either active cancer patients, like in the treatment rooms, in the waiting rooms, in doctor's office, that you have also heard?
So I'm because it was quiet, I'm gonna throw my voice in there and say I have accidentally been the cause of that. Just being in a space where there are other patients and I get asked a question and I'm all bubbly and upbeat. And a lot of the things, one of the things I say when people say, how do you deal with it so well? How do you keep your positive attitude? My response is usually because I have cancer, my daughter does not, my son does not, my husband does not. And if I ever had the opportunity to take that for them, I would. So when I start to get down, I just remember that I have cancer and they don't. And I can see, I've seen it before where I'm like, I just accidentally made someone feel really crappy. And it wasn't my intention. So I've accidentally done that, was the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's very common too, especially because people don't like to hear negative emotions. They envy people who are positive and like they look like they have their life together. Again, comparing your insides to other people's outsides. It's a matter of like, how do you say so positive? I don't. Like, I don't. It's a struggle sometimes. I have a husband, a daughter, a son, whoever in my support system that helps me, but I don't. And it's okay to admit those negative feelings. People tend to shy away from them. Again, going back to the idea that everybody should be happy, everybody's life should be together, but also because like keeping up with the Joneses, everybody should be happy, everybody should have this in order, and that applies to cancer patients too, anywhere in their journey as well.
And somebody in the chat answered your question, Brooke, to say, yes, even those of us with cancer have had a hard time knowing how to handle those with cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And I would say it's probably even harder toxic positivity wise from cancer patient to cancer patient, because there are probably so many similarities that are going through, especially if you're in a doctor's office for a specific type of diagnosis, like you're seeing the GYN office or the head and neck office or whatever it may be, implying those just to be like, sometimes people will ask like, how are you doing? Because they want to know that you're also struggling so they don't feel alone. But sometimes they want to actually genuinely care, like, are you doing okay? Like, are you fine? And then it's okay to like have that candid conversation of like, you know what, this is how I feel, this is what's going on. If you want to talk about it more, if you're close with them or whatever it may be. Sometimes people just want to make like idle chit chat and they don't mean to be have like toxic positivity, but sometimes it just naturally comes out in a basic conversation where you don't have time to go more in depth, or you don't have the connection to be able to trust them with those negative emotions.
Thanks, Brooke. We have time for just a couple more questions if anybody has any questions before we log off today.
I am just wondering, I am just having a little hard time here, sitting here. How could positive thinking would be so toxic? I guess I'm just, and then so, like we have been saying all this time that people care about other people and therefore they are asking. And of course, there is an exception too, some people are curious and all that. But in general, most people care and want to give some support. And I'm just wondering here, then, how do we ask questions? What kind of questions do we ask? Give them support. And so I'm just wondering.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to flip the script and ask you guys, like, what kind of questions you would like to be asked in order to be able to genuinely express how you feel, or not give the impression with the question that people ask that you have to say, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, everything's golden. So I'm going to flip it and ask you guys what you want to know or what you would like to hear.
That's hard because I really don't know what I want to hear. I don't know what I want to be asked. You know, it's because I have other medical diagnoses also, and it's like they were used to me for this for so many years, and then all of a sudden this breast cancer comes up, and now it's like something totally new for them to be asking me about. But sometimes I just don't know what I want to hear or be asked.
Yes, very, very, very common, very true. And it's the fact of like, you might not know until they ask it. I would start with the general, like giving a very open-ended question versus a closed question. A closed question is something like, how are you doing? Good. That's people just natural response to say good. Or, you know, I'm fine. Versus an open-ended question of like, hey, I know you're going through treatment. If you want to talk about it or if you want to process it, I would love to be able to support you in whatever way that you can. And then give them or the other person the opportunity to say, yes, I would like to, or like, no, I'm actually okay for right now. I can reach out if I need something. So give them the option to even respond or to bring up the topic itself.
I think it would be nice to have not even be asked a question. Just say, hey, you're looking good today. You know, what are you doing this afternoon? Just, or you're looking tired today. Would you like to sit down? We can chat for a second. Just, I don't want to always be asked about my health. I have one person, every time I see her, she says, how's your health? It's like, you know, it's the same as last time you asked me. You know, it's no different. So just casual conversation. Let's just keep it easy, unless it is someone that you're close to and they really do want to know the depth of what you're going through.
Yeah, great options too. Again, it's kind of like Shannon said, like flip the script, like, well, how's your health? Or it's something as simple as like, again, asking a question that's not even related to health. How's the family? How's the trip that you just went on or whatever it is? And let them be open to like adding in the emotional side of their medical treatment or whatever it may be versus opening the question with that.
I think you should try to treat everybody as normal as possible. I mean, treat them just like they're another person, and not a person with cancer, but just like, you know, like she said, how's, you know, it's a nice day. The weather's great. How's your attitude? You know, I mean, whatever, just say anything, but don't say, how's your health? You know?
Yeah, great add-ons. I love that.
Yeah, there was a comment in the chat box and it said, at work, I hear a lot that I look normal, that I look back to normal, or since I finished radiation, I must be back to normal. And they had just said, what is normal?
I always put the word normal in quotes because normal is different to everybody. It's not necessarily everybody has a normal, everybody just has a routine or strategy to get through things. And commenting on looks, especially for anybody at any point in age or time, is always dicey. So I would say, like, it's so good to see you. I'm so happy you're here, and making comments based off like their physical presence in the situation versus their physical appearance.
That's helpful. Thanks, Brooke. I think we're getting close on time, so we're going to close it up. But like I said, we did record this event, so that'll be available for watching this week. I did want to put a quick plug for anybody that is joining us from the Omaha or local area that we do have an annual conference where we have breakout sessions. We talk about things like this and other things related to the cancer journey. And so that conference is going to be on Tuesday, May 7th, and you can check our website out for more details on that. But I just want to do a special thank you to everyone in the room for joining us. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the questions. And thank you especially to Brooke for all your expertise and insight.
You are so welcome. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for this class.
Thank you.
Thank you.